Right, we are live.
Anthony, I do need you to allow me to share screen.
Oh, rude. That's something that's helpful. Yeah.
It is.
All right, should we good to go?
All right, everybody, good to have everybody on board. As we Let me also adjust my screen a little bit here and get ready for this evening's webinar. If you don't mind, I'm always excited to see who's calling in and get a sense. Last trends webinar that we did almost a month ago have had people from all over the world, including Hong Kong. I believe there was a South America and some all across the East Coast. So I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Anthony is located in Boston today, so we are representing the cross country effort tonight. But excited to have everybody on. If you don't mind going on the chat and let us know where you're calling in from. Just give us a city or a country or a place. Tampa, Florida. Fantastic. Thank you for coming on with us at this time of night. Tampa, Florida. Appreciate it. California, of course. California, lots of Californias. Menlo Park specifically, fantastic. Oregon. I'm a big fan of Oregon in general, so it's always good to see Fremont, more Bay Area, lots of Bay Area, San Jose, Fremont. Good to have everybody. Keep going. Georgia, fantastic. So, always good to have everybody. Go ahead and keep sharing. Love to see it. Michigan, awesome, fantastic. But to maybe just to kind of intro our time, we are going to do. I'm going to share some content about college majors. I feel like there's a lot of sort of new and important data to share. Some of that is going to be rehashed from the Trends webinar if you were there. So there's going to be some of that plus a little bit more specific data to share. And I'm going to share a little bit about how college majors, at the beginning point of a very dynamic and changing job landscape, how college majors could potentially influence our choices for the forthcoming 5 to 10 years. So excited to come on and share. I'm gonna bring on Anthony. I just want to introduce you to Anthony. Anthony's our operations person, and he's been awesome. You've seen him on previous webinars. He's gonna jump back in, and he's certainly a familiar voice and face. So we'll grab you back in later, and if there are questions of any form, go ahead and post them on the Q&A. Anthony will come back. We'll address all the questions near the end, and I think my intention is to actually try to keep the content session shorter and open up for more time for questions. And I know that a lot of you represent students with specific scenarios. Happy to dig into it, happy to share as much as we can, give as much insight as we can, and then go from there. All right. So, all right, let's get started. Let me do a quick intro of myself just in case you don't know me, but my name is Elton Lin. I'm the CEO and founder of Illumin Education. I've been doing private college advising for actually more than 12 years now, and our students have been admitted to every top 50 university, including every Ivy League. We work with more than 300 students per year, submit more than 2,000 applications per year. So we see a fairly good cross-section of students, and our consulting director, president, is a former University of California admissions counselor. So we have a fair amount of visibility, have seen quite a bit, and happy to certainly share as much experience and insight and everything else as much as we can along the way. Maybe just to give us a quick primer for where we'll be going today. The topic is why college majors matter, and do college majors matter, and they certainly do. And in respects to the admissions process, certainly more so now than ever before. You know, what you choose for your college major does matter. Now, certainly it matters in different degree depending on which university you're thinking about applying to. whether it be, a Stanford or a UC Berkeley or an Emory, whatever the case may be. The choice of your major matters. It may matter more in some cases, may matter less in some cases, but increasingly it does matter. And I'm also going to spend a little bit of time talking about how your intended majors could possibly impact your future career path. And I think especially for parents, having just gone through like a good host of college list conversations with families, there's always just a lot of understandable anxiety about like what does choosing a major mean right now? If I choose bio, does that mean I can't choose data science? Or if I choose history, does that mean I can't switch over to to art or design or whatever the case may be? And there's a lot of fear, inhibition about making some of these choices. And so happy to get into some data presently about the job landscape, how why it matters, and where we might be going with college majors. So let's talk first about how college majors impact the admissions process. Some of this, if you were at our trends webinar, I did go over some of this content already, but have some, again, more of this for you to share. Just to give you a quick overview, this is an overview of 2022 and the total number of bachelor degrees conferred in 2022, depending on major categories. So if you just kind of skim around and take a look, obviously business is significant, computer and information sciences over 100,000, engineering at 123, health professions, psychology, social science, history, still relatively significant. But if you look at the difference between 2012 and 2022, this is, in my opinion, way more telling. So in 2012, you're talking about the number of degrees conferred, for bio, it's 100K, 2022, 131K. Not a humongous difference in my opinion, but when you start looking at computer and information sciences, and it essentially has doubled since 2012. I think we can all, probably understand the growth of computer science, certainly, but you can see the growth in these top six, but also see the decline in the bottom three: social sciences, history, English language and literature, foreign languages. And you can automatically get the sense that with a higher demand in STEM, computer sciences, engineering, invariably that's going to crimp the admissions, crimp the applicant pool and crimp the admissions rate with regards to trying to get into the university that you're targeting. So maybe just to kind of give you a glimpse of most popular majors of 2023, based on Glassdoor, you can kind of get a sense of where they are pointing at. Obviously, computer science dominated by engineering. And if you look at the Indeed survey, it certainly comes up nursing number one, which I think nursing will continue to be a high demand career field for a long time. And but they still have some of the other obvious ones like computer science, but they include some of the other health practices, and but it's still computer science, math and statistics, some business and finance functions. So kind of getting a glimpse, but when you start taking a look at the most popular majors that lead to the most popular jobs, you're getting a sense of where where everyone is moving towards. And so what does this mean? Obviously, the in-demand majors are going to be more selective. So if you put down your intended major as computer science, obviously that will make applying to that particular school more selective, more competitive. Your major choice may make a college a reach as opposed to a target or safety, and maybe and I will get into some specific data. Certainly choosing a more selective major may make it more difficult to get in. Strong grades with many APs is, generally speaking, not enough, because you're talking about more students applying, generally speaking, more stronger students applying. So you're going to get a lot of students who have strong grades and good test scores. And a lot of the differentiation will be in what you do outside of class. So the fourth point being resumes needs to support your interest in higher demand majors. Needs to be more clear. So if you're on the admissions side and you're thinking, I only have a certain number of students, I have way more or a certain number of seats in a particular department, I have way more applicants than I really need. I really want to see whether a student is committed to really studying that particular area of study. And so your resume becomes much more important in the review process. Maybe they kind of give you a specific study on a UC Santa Barbara overall acceptance rate around 26%. That probably flexed a little bit up and down, but around 26%. 90 majors at UC Santa Barbara, 125K applicants. 10,000 of those 125K applicants applied to computer science. 8,000 of the 10,000 had UC 4.0 GPAs and up, and only 800 were admitted, which makes the effective acceptance rate for computer science at a 6.4% when the rest of the university is still at a 26%. And so this is where, again, applying into the more selective impacted majors is going to make it a little bit more difficult. So maybe a quick glimpse into the UC CS admit rates, and this was 2 years ago, so this is 2022, and you can kind of get a glimpse that especially the top half of the UC CS admit rates are all single digits. So I mean, essentially, if you're talking about a UC Irvine for CS, you're talking about getting into CS at UC Irvine is essentially like getting into like an MIT or University of Pennsylvania or many other Ivy Leagues. So I often have found over the course of the last 5 years, just a lot of frustration, especially being in California, a lot of students wanting to apply computer science, computer engineering into the UC system. It's becoming way more restrictive. There's a lot of frustration, but it's purely just because there's just so many applicants. And so I'm not so much saying that people shouldn't do computer science. I'm more so wanting to communicate what the dynamic is, the landscape is, as it relates to applying into these schools. Let's get even more specific with with engineering schools. This is the UCLA School of Engineering, and if you want to even break down specifically like the admit rates for individual majors within engineering, I mean, just to kind of give you, if you just skim down and talk about aerospace, about engineering, civil engineering, and then maybe the things to point out is that even within the engineering school, there is a different admit rate. And so you're talking about a chemical engineering, which generally speaking has fewer applicants than computer science. If you just look at the total applicants as it relates to computer science, I mean, it's a tenth of the total number of applicants. I'm sorry, 10% of the total number of applicants of the total computer science pool. So obviously the admit rate will be a little bit more robust than a computer science, a computer engineering. And so if you can see from here, chemical materials engineering, excuse me, are certainly going to be a higher admit rate than the more higher demand majors within the engineering school. So even as you think about this, there is even a little bit more differentiation. Now, not every school has this data. UCLA, this data is public and off their site. But not every school has this out, but you can kind of get a sense of, generally speaking, what are the higher demand majors even within engineering. So what do? Number one, it's good to certainly consider other majors and or other routes. And I do feel like many students, not every student, but many students, at this stage, you're not entirely sure what you want to do, and it's okay to consider other majors and what else might be a good fit, and may want to ask yourself the question: is it more important to be admitted for the major, or is it more important to be admitted to school? And I often ask these parents, and a lot of parents say we need both, but you can't have everything in life, as many of us know. So oftentimes you have to prioritize one or the other. So, which one's more important to you? Number two, apply to more targeted safety schools. We can get, this is another webinar altogether, but but it's important to make sure that a large percentage or a good number of the schools you're applying to are schools that you're confident you're going to be admitted to. And applying to more of them only benefits you in most respects. We can get into the dynamics of, a lot of people applying to a lot of safety schools, but generally speaking, applying to more safety schools also provides an opportunity for more of those safety schools to provide merit aid and supplement the admissions package with some merit scholarship. And so this is what I always tell families, like, I mean, you apply to the UC system, and if you're applying to computer science, and let's just say you got into UC Santa Cruz, UC Riverside, which are terrific schools, by the way, but if a private school, the school like a Baylor or a Loyola Marymount in California, if they were to give anywhere between 10 and 25K for you to go to those schools, would you consider it? And I always feel like I'm not telling anybody that they need to go to any particular place, but I always like families and students to have the option. And so having the option to go to a school with some kind of merit aid package can only happen if you apply to enough targeted safety schools. So let me encourage you to do that. And then if you're a younger 9th and 10th grade student, building a resume that clearly communicates the student's interest in that particular major, especially if you're aiming at a more competitive major, is increasingly more important. So let me just provide some alternative major options. Again, if you were in the Trends webinar, you would have seen this, but I'm not going to kind of go into too much depth into this, but just to kind of take a quick look, there are, certainly applied math, cybersecurity, statistics, data science is becoming increasingly more popular. I really actually like cognitive science because it is a fusion of psychology, linguistics, and computer science. And I think the interdisciplinary relationship between those three disciplines super important for AI and any kind of crafting of machine learning algorithms. So I think it's a great major. I'm going to talk a lot about a humanities major with a CS minor later, so I'll come back to that. But maybe some other options for biology, business. Maybe and a clear note. I seem to have this say this statement a lot to a lot of families, but pre-med students do not need to be science majors. And so students who are aiming towards applying to med school can be in any major. And med schools are very open to a diversity of students with different backgrounds, including different academic backgrounds. So they're not just looking to fill med schools with a bunch of bio majors. So if you're aiming towards that direction, be open to any major, and you just need some time to study for the MCAT. So maybe some other alternative majors for other disciplines, more common ones. Certainly less competitive majors, foreign languages, English, history, philosophy. There is, I think, a small, unfortunate trend of foreign language departments at universities closing, and I feel rather sad about that. And I feel, especially in such an international, mobile community that we live in now, being a student of different languages and cultures is super important. So I feel sad that those departments are closing, but it's reflective of the demand. So that's a part of the issue here. There are more colleges offering a CS X other major program, meaning a computer science plus other major. And the most notable example is University of Illinois Champaign, Urbana-Champaign. If you just apply into the computer science major in the School of Engineering, it's around a 7.5%. Actually, that's 2 years ago. I think it's probably gone down since then. But they offer a computer science plus combo major with other programs, and that's averaging at around a 19% admit rate. So when you think about, where you want to apply to, I think applying into the combo programs at UIUC is a good deal. And maybe some examples of what some of those combo majors look like. You can certainly take a look and do some exploration on the UIUC website and dive into that as well. You can imagine, like I think a very underrated option here is computer science plus linguistics. Again, a lot of human-computer interaction design is really based on language processing. So I think the CS plus linguistics super great combo in my opinion, and notwithstanding the computer science plus philosophy, which I will get into more later in this presentation. All right. When considering different majors, don't randomly choose. I mean, and you shouldn't just choose a major just because it's easy to get into. We have a former Rice admissions officer who is on our advisory team, and he was telling me that when they were reviewing applications, and there was an incongruence, like meaning like a student declared, like he got an app where it was like very, robotics, computer science club, a STEM club, research experience, and then that student declared like French as their major. And it was just automatic tip off that there was some incongruence between what the student chose to intend to study. And it was obvious that the student chose a major just to get into the school. And so you can imagine if you see it, it just becomes, well, I don't really trust you. And there's some sense of like, I don't believe what you're writing on this app is true. So admissions can detect majors that don't match. So you can't just choose randomly. You need to choose a major that does fit your profile and lines up with your storyline of where you're going and what you're really interested in. And you should consider major plus minor combinations, as I will get into a little bit more later. Maybe to finish this section off and share a little bit about just a real quick student case study. We had a student. This was like 2 or 3 years ago, probably 2 years ago. 3.8 unweighted, 1500 on SAT, 11 APs, which is pretty strong. You can get a sense of their activities, 3 fairly significant leadership roles. Had 2 science fair projects, one regional winner, and then the state recognition, and then an internship, research summer programs. And this was the results. Yellow waitlisted, red rejected, and then green admitted. So the student was admitted to Purdue. To be frank with you, studying computer science at Purdue is fantastic. So it's a great place to do so. But certainly the student perhaps had more hopes of being admitted to more schools. And unfortunately, it is what it is. Same year, environmental science, 3.7 unweighted. You can kind of just, even if you just glance over the profile, you can get a sense that on paper, the student the student is not as strong on paper. And so resume is maybe not as robust, less rigor in the courses with lower APs, but was admitted to Berkeley, Irvine, Santa Cruz, rejected to LA, and Davis as well. But admitted to University of Washington, Boston University, and now attending UC Berkeley. And so in this particular case, now again, I don't want to sort of categorically say this is the experience at every university, because it's not. But it's going to be different for each university setting. But increasingly, what we're saying, increasingly applying into the more impacted majors will impact the admissions result at many schools across the US. So I know there's going to be questions, and I promise we'll come to it when we get to the end. Let's jump into how majors impact careers, and maybe if we can take a 2-second deep breath before we get into it. So wherever you're at, Michigan and or Florida, take a deep breath for a moment. Anthony, should we jump into one question?
Sure, let's break it up a
All
little
right, let's
bit.
do one question, and I promise we'll come to all the other questions when we get to the end.
Let's do this one, because I know a lot of people have questions about like the transfer system through community college as well, and I think a lot of people think that that's also like a potential way to also get into a major that potentially is too hard as a freshman admit. But yeah, basically the question is, does transferring from community college give a higher potential admit rate for the student? And then, you know, they didn't mention it, but I think it's good to talk about tag or transmission guarantee also.
Yeah. So just to, I mean, we have even our team, we have a specific transfer team that knows the ins and outs, the backwards and forwards of the transfer process. So they can do a webinar themselves. So I think it would actually probably be a good one. But just to maybe address it quickly, generally speaking, for schools that prioritize transfer students, the UC system does prioritize transfer students. USC does prioritize transfer students. There is a list on the internet of schools that do prioritize transfer students. Stanford does not prioritize transfer students. So, and you can just base it on the number of transfer students they admit every year. So, but for the schools that do prioritize transfer students, it is true that the pool is smaller for the amount of spaces. And so, without getting into like a gigantic list of like admit rates for specific majors, but it is almost across the board easier to or the admit rates are higher almost across the board for many majors for when considering transfer. So I often tell students that it's a good, I mean, if you're not entirely sure, maybe your high school years were not as strong as you'd like, staying 2 years, staying at home, and getting some better clarity on what you might want to study, like finish your degree with. I always find that a lot of our students who really struggle in high school, oftentimes the maturity switch does click once they get to community college. And many times students do a lot better. And if you end up getting, I always find that I think getting a 4.0 in community college is a lot easier than getting a 4.0 in high school. And so considering the transfer option is a good way to go. So definitely, especially with the UC system, it's more advantageous. USC, it's more advantageous. And it's been increasingly more advantageous the last couple of years. There's a little bit of a market recorrection in the past year. I think there's more community college enrollment. So I think 2021, 2022 was sort of like the boom year for transfer students. There was like the same amount of spaces at schools and not as many applicants because community college enrollment was way down. Community college enrollment is almost back to normal, but and so it's not as extreme as it was in 2021, 2022, but it's still easier than applying as a high school student. All right. I'm going to jump into this next section, and we will definitely go into as many questions as we can. So let me introduce this section first, how majors impact careers, by coming in with a quote. It's a little bit lengthy, but let me kind of break it down for us. This is Brad Smith, actually president of Microsoft now, but at that time he was the EVP of AI for Microsoft. But he says at one level, AI will require that even more people specialize in digital skills and data science, of course. But skilling up for an AI-powered world involves more than science, technology, engineering, and math. And as computers behave more like humans, the social science and humanities will become even more important. Languages, art, history, economics, ethics, philosophy, psychology, and human development courses can teach critical philosophical and ethics-based skills that will be instrumental in the development and management of AI solutions. And essentially what if the audience is reflective of a lot of the families that we work with here in the Silicon Valley, I mean, a lot of you are in tech companies, and the truth is that you're already seeing it. Where what is needed in the forthcoming AI restructuring or AI revolution, however way that you might want to see it, are people who are able to understand how to facilitate the deployment of technology more than people who are building the technology. And so that oftentimes requires critical thinking skills, philosophical skills, ethics-based skills that aren't always built into a technology STEM based computer science and engineering curriculum. This is a research paper put out by Lightcast plus the Business of Higher Education Forum, which is their assessment of what are the most essential skills for the forthcoming future. And they based it almost entirely on job opening descriptions. And so basically took a look at the evolution of 10 years of job recs, job openings from Fortune 500 companies, looking at what employers are looking for in their hirees. And they've come up with like the essential skills, and it's built based on human skills, digital skills, and business skills. And if you kind of just scan through, you're talking about definitely, you know, whether it's programming, software development, whether it's business processes, communication, but the human skills also include communication, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, working with teams. And this is not sort of like they're not trying to make this guess into the future. This is based on what employers are looking for. And as they looked at specific job opening, and they separated between job openings for senior manager level jobs, and they compared it with all job openings. And they found that the senior and manager level jobs required more skill sets that related to human and business related skills more than technical skills. And I think those of us who've been in any kind of corporate environment, I think we already know that oftentimes the people who are progressing into senior management level jobs are people who are able to communicate, people who are able to work in teams, people who can cast vision, people who are able to really bring people together. And from the business perspective, able to take technology and see that see how whatever technology you're working with is able to be leveraged for greater business gain. And so, you know, I think none of this is like of any surprise, but I think the emphasis on human and business related skills as you progress through your career becomes way more important than the technical skill set. And it's evidenced in this chart here. Just to kind of, you know, break this up a little bit, Mark Cuban, tech billionaire, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, saying that, hey, and this was his quote in 2017, in 10 years, a liberal arts degree in philosophy will be worth more than a traditional programming degree. And it was, you know, fairly salacious in 2017, perhaps might still be salacious to you right now, but even as you think about it in 2024, it's a little bit less ridiculous. And this reality of like having, you know, the slow cooling of the computer science or the software development hiring pool, and the increased need for people who understand how to navigate an uncertain future, especially with AI, is going to be ever so important. I do want to maybe establish a couple obvious facts that I think everybody knows. The starting salaries for STEM majors coming out of college are 37% higher than any other major. And I think, you know, it's of course we know that. And especially living in the Silicon Valley, we certainly have a lot of parents who really want to heavily encourage, if you will, their kids to go into computer science. And a lot of the reason is because of this 37% higher in starting salaries. But the data on 10-year salaries is not so conclusive. So this is where after 10 years, most liberal arts majors catch up in their average salaries. So like an average salary across engineering disciplines at around the 125K range, but the average social science major is at 131K. I mean, I don't know why, even when I looked at this number, I found it to be really. And the reality is that a lot of, like, if you're talking about a history or a political science major, a lot of where are those guys going? I mean, a lot of them are going into business development. Some of them are going into sales. Some of them are going into project management. They don't necessarily need to be technical experts, but they're able to go into. Some of them are going in to be attorneys. They are going into roles that are also very lucrative, and they're not sort of. Oftentimes, when I've heard plenty of like, my son or daughter wants to study history, and the parents saying, "What are you going to be, a history teacher?" And not to disparage any history teachers. I love my history teacher when I was in high school, but there are more options other than teaching history. And so, and maybe to give you a couple of quick examples, the former CEO of HP was a history major. The former CEO of Goldman Sachs was an English major, right? So this is where the mobility of somebody who studied the social sciences, who studies the humanities, is way less restrictive, I think, than you think. And so when you look at the 10-year data, liberal arts majors definitely catch up. A couple other pieces of data, 37% of technical job skills. Generally speaking, 37% of your technical skills are replaced every 5 years. So it just becomes obsolete. Like, whether I remember learning Fortran in college, for those of you who are computer science people, who's using Fortran these days, right? So there's a 30% drop in software jobs posting since 2020. And alone in May of 2023, 3,900 jobs were eliminated by AI. And it's kind of, it's a changing landscape, without question. And so maybe some observations, maybe then, and I think, certainly, again, definitely those of you who are in tech, I think you're recognizing the need for coding skills, the need for a lot of coding skills going down. Though technical fluency is still absolutely critical. Now, technical fluency is not the same as technical mastery. So being able to converse and understand the technical world is different than being an expert in building databases, right? So I think this is where technical fluency becoming more important than technical mastery, ability to learn fast become more important than skill mastery, and then being able to balance human, business, and technical skills is ever so important for a forthcoming job landscape. And then maybe the most important thing here is that there's no one college and major that addresses all three. So maybe some next steps before we get into questions is, this is where I feel like, I mean, I've been doing college advising, more than 12 years, almost 13, almost, 13 plus now. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. I've talked with a lot of teens and with a lot of parents. Certainly a lot of teens who have been interested in history, English, political science, any range of other things, and having navigate this conversation of like, oh, you need to study computer science, or you need to study engineering, or you need to study biology, or some form or another. And this is sort of like the period of time, I almost feel like it's important for students to, if you're interested in the humanities, embrace it. It's a good time to explore the humanities. But my advice to every student is consider double majoring or minoring in a discipline that is contrasting in nature to what you're interested in. So if you're going to start off as a history major, consider minoring in computer science. If you're going to be majoring in graphic design, consider doing a minor in statistics. If you are majoring in data science, consider double majoring in philosophy. And this is where you are building a multi-pronged skill set that will help you learn fast, have the skill sets and insight to navigate up the corporate ranks, and be able to navigate a very uncertain world that, like, job markets and industries could change drastically. I mean, and they will change drastically in the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to be the people who will be able to navigate that well will have will have multiple skill sets. Will know how to think about the human aspects as well as the technical aspects. So consider doing both in school, and but in so doing, definitely for those of you who are interested in humanities, embrace it. And then lastly, in the respects to your college education, think about, again, supplementing your education with different types of internships. and different certificates that that could be easily inserted onto your resume. And then by the time you graduate, there is a diversity in your actual education. There's internships that represent a reflection of different experiences. And there could be certificates that also signal to hiring people that you have the skill sets to be ready for a job on day one. So as a quick summary before we get into questions, intended major may reduce admissions chances. Consider technical plus humanities major and minor combinations for longer term job viability. But maybe my last encouragement to students, especially students who are not as attuned to computer science and engineering, embrace your curiosities. Begin with your strengths and begin there, and then find ways to build your direction based on those. Honor how you were built. Honor the passions that were built within you, and the skill sets that you were given, and where your genuine curiosities are going, and begin there. So, all right. Excited to go into questions. Let me invite Anthony back in, and happy to talk as long as we can tonight. So.
Sounds good. Most of it's going back to the first topic around major selection,
All
change.
right, of course.
But yeah, main question of just how would you kind of research schools where schools that are easier to switch around with majors or experiment or kind of promote that as part of their curriculum compared to places that might be a little bit more rigid.
Yeah, you're gonna have to it's gonna be on a case by case basis, and you're gonna certainly need to. My sense is that before doing this massive search on which schools you can transfer majors in, begin by building a college list of schools that are a good fit for you. Reduce that down to a manageable number, and then do some more in-depth research with those schools on which schools you can transfer majors with. Historically, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo has been really poor with changing majors, especially into the most impacted majors. I think you can assume right now with regards to like the UC system transferring into engineering and specifically computer science is going to be super challenging. But you contrast that with a school like Rice, where it's still very much a liberal arts approach to the educational process, and changing majors is really easy. And so before we get into a massive list of which schools are easier to transfer in or not, figure out which schools are a good fit, reduce that list down, and then do a little bit dig in. You can certainly reach out to the admissions office. You can read a little bit of Reddit. I don't know if I encourage a big Reddit, I'm gonna live off everything that's off Reddit, because I think a lot of it is questionable. However, you can certainly get into a little bit of Reddit to see what it is like on the ground.
Sounds good. And then questions around undeclared of where that would fit into this area, as well as things like an undeclared engineering or an undeclared specific to a department.
Yeah, so the UC system is offering, and other schools are offering more and more of an undeclared engineering, which is, so it depends on a school by school basis. So in some cases, an undeclared engineering means that you're admitted within the engineering school. And then you being able to change majors within engineering is simple and just filing paperwork. And other schools where it is undeclared and you're thinking about engineering and you're just signaling to the admissions office to perhaps anticipate whether you might be one of these students who might be changing majors. So you still need to reduce down the list of the schools that are a good fit first, and then do some digging as far as whether that school offers an undeclared engineering. But an undeclared in general normally is an undeclared student that's reviewed in a public school review process, reviewed under the colleges of arts and sciences, so the larger college that houses the majority of majors. And so you're normally considered that sub-college's student. And thereby, if you're changing majors within that sub-college, it's not normally a big issue. So if you're changing majors to in most of the times, College of Arts and Sciences or the College of Letters and Sciences in the UC system is housing econ, bio, history, and changing majors between those majors is not so difficult.
I think relevant to again, it's The question is, how about 4+1 master's programs? And I'm going to tweak it a little. How about, well, can you also comment about 3+2 programs? Since I think that also fits into that idea of your kind of interdisciplinary or having two strong opposing subjects or different subjects.
Oh, okay. So just to maybe give us a little bit of context, because I feel like the 4.1, 4+1 BSMS, it's very dependent on the university. And you're not, in most cases, not every case, but in most cases, you're not applying to it as a high school student. You're applying to it once you get to the college. So Northeastern has quite, I mean, actually quite a few universities have a 4.1 type program. So it's like a computer science plus a master's in data science, something like that. A 3 point, when I hear a 3+2 engineering program, I relate that to most liberal arts colleges have what they call a 3.2 engineering program, where a liberal arts college doesn't have an engineering department. But for example, and I was just looking at this earlier for a student who's interested in engineering, but really likes Occidental College in Los Angeles. And Occidental College has a 3.2 program where a student can finish their degree at Columbia or Caltech to finish their engineering degree. So to me, it's like, it could be like a really good deal. A student can go to a liberal arts college and get a smaller private school attention, but still get the benefit of going to a premier engineering school. So applying into Columbia Engineering, obviously more difficult than applying to Occidental, and you could potentially get both. So I think that's the benefit of a 3.2.
And then the question about earlier when you were talking about, I think the hypothetical of the student with a lot of CS activities that did not match up with the major that they were applying as, how would you recommend a student approach that if they are going into the admission seasons already with those activities? Like how would that student try to shift their profile a little bit or kind of pitch a different major at that point, do you think?
So this is my reflection on, I think, the past 3 years. And we obviously get a lot of computer science. I do feel like we've seen more and more very robust resumes. I do feel like there's a couple of things that that admissions people pay very much attention to. I think if you're a computing Olympiad finalist, a camp qualifier, you're a top 25 USICO performer, and we've seen the overwhelming majority of those students get into MIT, or you're talking about, maybe another one, international math Olympiad qualifier, like you're talking about the level of competitive achievement is very significant, and it's hard to ignore that. So assuming that's not the case, we've seen just a lot of robust resumes, and oftentimes, like I find that you just cannot, if you're on the admission side, maybe thinking if you're to put yourselves in their shoes, and I'm not trying to single out, like single out, like I'll single out Gun High School because Anthony went to Gun High School. But when I say Gun High School, I'm in Palo Alto, California. Generally speaking, kind of a power high school with a lot of, certain demographic, but all the schools that are kind of similar to that. If you're on the admission side, you're not going to, like, just because there's an inordinate amount of strong CS applicants from that one school, you're not going to admit all of them. You want to diversify the applicant, the admits from different high schools in different regions. So you can only admit so many strong students. So if you're like a super strong CS student from Gun High School, the truth is that there's going to be a lot of super strong CS students from Gun High School. And you just have to understand that's where you're working up against. If you're certainly applying from South Dakota or even Humboldt County in Northern California, I mean, it's a different pool, right? So my thing is, like, you still need to do your best. Obviously find ways to, whatever you're building on a tech side, help more people, make more people's lives better with whatever you're building. Think about that first. But then on the safety side, you need to apply to more safety schools and have more options. So.
We got about 10 more minutes, so I'll take a couple more questions, but definitely if you have any others, put them in the comments or the Q&A. I'll definitely try to get to them. I guess a question on the opposite end of, and so when we were talking about 12th grade, maybe a younger student who's saying if you have no idea on a major and unsure about your passion, how would you recommend a student start with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's the thing. I always tell families, I think oftentimes families feel like their child is the only one who doesn't know. There's in my opinion, the majority of students don't know what they want to study. And it's okay. I mean, I think it's unrealistic to expect a 17-year-old to have utmost clarity on their future. It's just not realistic. So my my sense is that I think one thing is you can certainly certainly continue on to a 4-year college, take the opportunity to really explore via your general education requirements and take a diversity of classes and experiences. And I would find that students who go in undeclared at the when they're 18 and 19 and 20, I think they know that there's pressure to declare, and they are intentionally exploring. So I think it's fair and okay to go into college with uncertainty about what you want to study, but you're going to certainly explore it. Another option is certainly to go to community college and save, to be frank with you, a lot of money and do those same general education exploration in the community college setting, and then go from there. So I think both options are fair, and but I also feel like if you do have an area of curiosity, like it's okay and good to begin there. I often find that when you think about, and I don't, I hate, I'm not trying to just pick on computer science. It's one of those, it's that time of the season. But certainly, and I found a fair amount of students who gone through computer science and then it really wasn't their curiosity, and they certainly maybe chose it because of job prospects or whatever, but just found their educational journey to be very demotivating. And I think when you think about long-term energy and motivation, beginning with where you're most curious, most cases invests into your curiosity bank and your motivation, and sets you up to keep learning. There's gonna, especially in the next 5 or 10 years, you have to keep learning. You're gonna have to acquire new skills. And beginning where you're most curious will continue to help you be a good learner for years to come. So begin with where you're curious and then add stuff. I think that's my suggestion.
Some more questions around these are getting a little bit more major specific, but a question
Mhm.
around management information systems as a potential alternative for CS, or I think also just opening other potential alternatives for kind of that direction. I think management info systems would be kind of that intersection between tech and business on that circle that you had earlier.
Yeah, yeah, I like MIS. I think and this is where you have to do some research on where MIS exists inside the college. So at a UC Berkeley, the MIS is another version of MIS at UC Berkeley is like operations management, and that's actually like outside of Haas School of Business. So MIS could be in the engineering school and it could be in the business school. And if you're in both of those brackets, both of those tend to be more competitive applicant pools. Operations management at UC Berkeley is in College of Letters and Science. So that's kind of, maybe where you should look at it. The MIS equivalent at Carnegie Mellon, Anthony's
Oh,
alma mater, is it's their own sort of interdisciplinary major, and outside of the School of Computer Science, which is not where you want. If you're wanting to get in, it's not where you want to be a part of that pool. But I like the major. I like the interdisciplinary type study of the program, where it exists at different schools. So yeah, go for it.
and then one last question. I think this is also centered around similar specifics of like where the major resides in the department, but basically a question around chemistry and chemical engineering, when you were talking about admit rates and how to kind of compare there when you're thinking about transferring either between chemistry or chemical engineering.
Yeah, so chemistry in almost every case is in the arts and sciences department, so or letters and science in the UC system, and outside of the engineering school. And so If you want to transfer into chemical engineering from chemistry, as I just showed you on the UCLA chart, that certainly chemical engineering is not going to be as dicey to transfer into as perhaps a computer science. But you're still going to run into like people wanting to get into the engineering school. And that in itself is going to be more difficult than say transferring from chemical engineering to chemistry. And so if you're I still kind of come back to what's more important. Is it more important to be in the major or is it more important to be in the school? And perhaps that's the way to kind of determine which direction to go. If it's more important to be a part of the major and you want to be chemical engineering, then that's really, more important in that respects. But yes, chemistry as a whole, I don't know because chemistry is difficult. I found chemistry to be difficult. And so like perhaps it's not seeing its day. Chemistry at UC Berkeley is still very difficult, but yeah, across many universities, it's less applied for.
Okay, we've gone through all the questions, so I think we can
Right.
here, Elton.
All right, that means Anthony gets to go have dinner at 11 p.m. and we will release him. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. I do feel like there's like a ton of different ways to go with this content. And if there is like you would like to know if there's a topic, actually, this would be super helpful. If there's a topic that you want us to dive into, like into like a 30-minute hyper, lots of data, lots of time for discussion, go ahead and post it on the chat right now. Anthony is gonna be
Oh,
there kind of paying
yeah.
attention to, and post it on the chat now. Tell us what topics like are like you would love to see a webinar in. Have us kind of do a deep dive into the data and then provide some forum for all of us to discuss. If none, then we're gonna find topics. We are going to do a pre-med webinar with some of one of my former students and his classmates who have been admitted to med school, who are applying to med schools across the United States. And so that one is coming up. I always enjoy talking with former students and seeing where they're at. But there's going to be more coming up. But if you think about something in the middle of the night and you want to tell Anthony, and he wants to know, Anthony, would you mind putting your email
Yep, that's
into
on
the
it.
chat? And Anthony wants to know what you want to explore in a webinar setting. Right, Anthony?
Yeah, and so far these look good. The ones that people have posted in, I see one about athletics, which I think is also important to kind of think about that. I hear a lot more families kind of thinking about that long term also of just when they're working with students who are younger. Um, yeah, and yeah, good follow-ups of thinking about social sciences and humanity majors as well. Just
Mhm.
topics that I'm curious about,
Because Anthony wants to apply to college again. All right. Always super enjoy this time with you all and look forward to doing it again. And please go ahead and post. If you want to message Anthony, please do. If you want to set up a free consultation to dig in deeper in relation to your student's background or profile, we can get into it and talk very specifically about your student's college prep journey. So go ahead and scan the QR code and it'll send a message to Anthony, and that's what he wants. All right. Good to have all of you. Good night. Thank all of you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
All right.
Bye.